separating the facts from the fiction and the Baba Mises from the bottom line. You're listening to the Rabbi and the Rebbitzin. I'm Rabbi David Vigler of Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens. My wife is Rebbitzin Chana Vigler. Both of us, the founders and spiritual leaders of the Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens, today with a very, very special presentation for you here on the Sunday Shmooze at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. How you doing, Chana?
You know, that's a pretty loaded question right there. I think that, in preparing for our radio show today, we really just felt that the world is in such a difficult spot right now. Everybody is hurting. There is so much pain and turmoil going on around us. And we felt that it was incredibly important to address this pain, but more specifically to address it with the Jewish view.
That's right. The world is going through darkness and confusion right now in so many respects, through pain and prejudice. And today, we're excited to share with you 3 vital tools to heal a hurting world. We're very excited to welcome to you a very special guest, first of 2 guests that we're going to be having today on this special live presentation at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. He is my fellow Chabad Rabbi, Rabbi Binyamin Abrams of Vermont.
Murray.
Sorry, Rabbi Binyamin Murray, not to be confused with another friend of mine from Boston. My apologies. Fellow Chabad Rabbi, Rabbi Binyamin Murray from Middlebury, Vermont, who is with us right here live on facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. Shalom, Rabbi Murray, and welcome to our Facebook live feed at Jewish Gardens. Shalom.
Shalom Aleichem. Thank you for having me.
We're delighted and honored to have you here. Thank you for joining. Rabbi Murray
I just want to make sure that we can see him on the feed. I'm not sure if it's showing up on Facebook. If you're able to see Rabbi Murray, just click onto the Zoom real quick so that we can make sure.
I don't know.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Okay.
Thank you.
Excellent.
We're in this time of quarantine, we're sort of being tested as being rabbis and IT directors and all sorts of technical producers here. So it looks like the signal is going through, and we would like to welcome everybody's questions here on Facebook Live. We're going to be following the questions coming in on Facebook Live, and if you just joined us, we're at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, where this radio show will be migrating very, very soon. In just a couple weeks' time, we'll be migrating, evolving from the radio station all the way through to facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, as well as youtube.com/Gardens. Our guest today is Rabbi Binyamin Murray from Middlebury in Vermont, and he is my fellow Chabad Rabbi with a fascinating story. Rabbi Murray, welcome to our presentation. Please, if you could, tell us your story. Where do you come from, and how do you get to where you are today?
I was born in a home for unwed mothers in upstate New York in a town called Cold Springs. At 14 days old, I was adopted. My biological mother wanted me very much to be raised by a Jewish family. It was something a bit unusual at the time that the Catholic Home Bureau would give over a Jewish baby to make sure that he had a Jewish education. I was very fortunate to be adopted by a loving family. And I grew up in Lebanon, Connecticut on a poultry farm. And I had a really idyllic childhood. My parents had my mother's adopted mother is Jewish, my adopted father is Catholic. And so I grew up in a mixed religious household. What that meant practically was that my mother and father were very clear that I'm Jewish, that my father is Catholic. I also have a younger brother who's adopted, who's not Jewish, he's Catholic. And growing up, I was very clear that I'm Jewish. And I grew up in like most American kids, very secular, playing sports. And as I was growing up, throughout my life, at various times, I've had to deal with people looking at me and thinking of me based on how I appear to them, the color of my skin. And, you know, as a young boy or any young child on the playground at school or teachers or in any variety of situations, skin color, that I look different than my parents, came up often. It came up on sports teams. It came up from parents of my peers on sports teams. Said some really vile things to me when I was 12, 13, 14 years old. I actually stopped playing sports. I stopped playing competitive sports at the University of Vermont because of racism on the team. You know, this is a topic that goes beyond the Jewish community. It's a topic that I was fortunate to become a facilitator many years ago for the Anti-Defamation League, or a program called A World of Difference. And as a facilitator, I work to teach students, middle school and high school students, how to manage perceived bias, how to deal with cyberbullying. And it takes a very mature person to be able to stand up and say, I have racial bias. If someone is going to be honest with themselves and they're going to say, I'm not racist, whatever that image is conjuring up in their mind, is it someone that's with a clan and is burning a cross? That's what a racist person means to you? Listen, we see in Crown Heights, we see in many places, racism, for someone to have their own bias, it doesn't, their skin could be black, their skin could be white, their skin could be any color, but that they have something in themselves, like we all do. We look at someone and we make judgments. So the question is, what happens after you make that judgment? Do you bring it down and you're going to speak about it to someone? You're going to put someone down? What's going to happen after that? Within my own personal story, there's a lot of hashgacha pratis, there's a lot of divine providence of different things that happened, reconnecting with my biological mother and my biological family. And you could read all about that on Chabad.org. David Margolin wrote a beautiful article. And if you search my name and Mumbai and Middlebury, you can get a bit more of the story there. I don't know if we have so much time to go in depth into any specific area. That was a really big gloss, but you'll let me know.
Rabbi Murray, if you could just tell us, I just want to tell our friends that are listening to us on Facebook.com, at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, that today we're talking about racial prejudice in the Jewish community with our fellow Chabad rabbi from Middlebury, Vermont. And he's telling us his life story, which is fascinating and intriguing. If you could like this video and share this video, we'd love to share this very, very important message, as today we're taking on, we will be sharing with you 3 vital tools to healing a world that is hurting. Rabbi Murray, if you could just share with us just the turning point about how you, as a Jewish kid living in a chicken farm on the border of Connecticut, how you decided to become a Chabadnik, just that part of the story, which led you to becoming a Chabad rabbi in Vermont.
Change happens slowly. And I can't give you a specific point. I can tell you a series of events that led me, or started to lead me on this path. The initial one, when I was in college, I took a course with a very dear professor, Professor Sugarman, and the title of the course was The Moral and Religious Perspectives of the Holocaust. Through that course, there were a number of books that started to bring up questions in my mind. The Judaism that I grew up with was Hanukkah candles, Passover Seder. You go to synagogue for a few hours on the holidays. And that was the extent of it. I had a bar mitzvah, etc. But when I started learning about the religious communities in Europe and the suffering that they went through during the times of the Holocaust, and how people maintain their faith, not only maintain their faith, but found sparks of light in that terrible, terrible darkness, it began to bring up questions in my mind that Judaism must be more than what I've been taught so far and what I've experienced so far. That for someone to have questions of how to live a Jewish life while you're being persecuted and your siblings and children are being murdered in front of you, and how does a house that you're living in a ghetto need a mezuzah? There's questions that were asked, Charlotte, questions and responses that were asked, and it made me think. It made me start thinking, and that, I think, was the turning point of me exploring more in my Judaism. As far as the point of becoming a shliach and a Chabad rabbi, it wasn't my plan, to be very honest with you. I had no idea this is what I was going to be doing with my life. My wife and I were dating. We didn't talk about going on shlichus. I had been involved after I graduated from college, I was involved on campus. I was the director of a small nonprofit. I was working 50%, 70% of the time with students. I had the background to work on campus, but it wasn't when I decided to go to yeshiva when I was 28 or 29. I just wanted to be able to raise a Jewish family. I wanted to be able to give my kids what I had been longing for and what I found.
Binyamin, how did your parents react to your decision to become a rabbi?
They're very proud of me. My parents are extremely supportive and loving. The change is slow. When I first came home, I remember going to my grandparents' house, and they remembered their parents, their religious parents and grandparents. And so I was talking to them, and they said, yeah, and they used to wear tzitzis. At that time, my tzitzis were not outside of my garments, they were tucked in. So I pulled them out, and I said, yo, you mean like this? And I watched the color drain from my parents. Yeah.
Sorry, and Rabbi Murray, so here you are. For those that just joined us, Rabbi Binyamin Murray is the Chabad rabbi of Middlebury, Vermont, a fellow Chabad rabbi, Chabad shliach. Like we are in Palm Beach Gardens, he's in Middlebury, Vermont, and he's telling us the story, and we're about to touch on 3 vital tools that are critical to healing our hurting world. If you could just tell us, Rabbi Murray, about your experience as a rabbi. Do you feel that, do you experience any racial prejudice in your capacity as a rabbi, as a Chabad rabbi in Vermont?
Like I said before, I'll give you an example. Recently, I had an experience where someone close to me mentioned something to the effect of the following: that he didn't have to be so careful with regulations around the COVID-19 virus, because Blacks and Hispanics are more likely statistically to contract the disease. What do you mean? Like, okay, so what if I told you that Jews caused the Black Plague? Is that a racist statement or is that factual?
Deeply insulting.
Yeah, disgusting. Of course not. I said, and what did you just say to me? Like, what just happened? You're talking about me and my children. It's just, it like flies over the top. Here in Vermont, thank God, there's a very welcoming community. Is there racism here? Why is Vermont different than New York? Why is Vermont different than Florida? There's racism everywhere. And as I said before, someone who's mature and honest with themselves is going to recognize when I see an image, I make a judgment call. Is it based on the color of their skin? Is it based on their weight? Is it based on their clothing? That bias, we all have that. And if someone's going to say, I don't have it, so maybe they really worked on themselves very hard and they don't have it. Or maybe they're not being honest with themselves.
This is fascinating, Hannah. It's just absolutely fascinating to hear this from you, Rabbi Murray. our fellow Chabad rabbi in Middlebury, Vermont. Our guest today on facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, where our radio show will be evolving in a couple weeks' time. So please friend us at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. He's talking about his life experiences as a Chabad rabbi in Middlebury, Vermont. How he got to this incredible place in his life together with his wife and children. And you just mentioned something that is mind-blowing, Rabbi Murray. You said that every single one of us has a degree of racial prejudice.
Yeah, I find that really interesting because I think the majority of us would like to say that we're not. Nobody wants to believe that they're racist. We all think, no, of course we're not racist. We think we have.
Let me clarify that a little bit, because having perceived bias and being racist, they could be different things. Going to have a perceived bias based on body type or body weight, or if someone's a single mother or a single father, or there's all different sorts of bias.
We judge people based on their appearance.
We size them up. As soon as we see somebody, we put them in a certain frame.
So my question to you, Rabbi Murray, what do you feel is the key to breaking harmony, to breaking the bias, to bringing harmony to a world that's hurting?
I was extremely fortunate to grow up in Lebanon, Connecticut. And one of the reasons I was extremely fortunate to grow up there is in my school system, in the morning, we had what was called a moment of silence. And my parents told me what I should think about during that time. And it was a time for reflection. It was time to think about those that I loved. It was time to think about my classmates, to think about the day, to center myself. And unfortunately, throughout the country, the word God has been removed from our public discourse. And what we really need to do, the Jewish community in the whole world, we have to recognize that we're all one. We're all created in God's image. We all come from God. And if I see something, the Baal Shem Tov teaches is that if I see something in someone else and it bothers me, it shows that I have something to work on. Additionally, there's an aspect that...
Rabbi Murray, if I could just stop you for a second. There was something so powerful that you just said. I just want to digest what you just said. Rabbi Murray Rabbi Binyamin Murray is together with his wife, Dr. Davida Murray, the co-directors of the Chabad of Middlebury, Vermont, and they're our guests today at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. Chana Vigler and myself, Rabbi David Vigler, are the spiritual leaders of Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens. We're your hosts. And we're talking about racial prejudice in the Jewish community. What Rabbi Murray is telling us is that every one of us has bias. Every one of us judges a book by its cover. It's human nature to judge a book by its cover. You look at people's weight, you look at their height, you look at what they're wearing, you look at what they're not wearing, you look at their car, we look at all sorts of things, and that's just a fact of life. Whether bias is racism is an interesting discussion. I know you're on limited time, Rabbi Murray, but what you just said was something so profound.
Well, there were quite a few profound things there, actually.
We're going to break this into little pieces.
I really want to unpack. You just said one phrase that was full of discussions right there. So for starters, you started off with a moment of silence.
That's right. That's what I'm
doing. Well, we're normally going in the same direction.
Hopefully.
We're usually pretty in sync. But and I really just want to focus on that for a minute. Speaking about the moment of silence.
It was something so profound.
Because the moment of silence is not actually something religious. It's not a religious thing at all. And it's really just about taking a moment of your day and, as you said, thinking about the important things in your life, recognizing the blessings, recognizing where they come from. They didn't just appear in your life. And whether you want to take that to a religious direction or not, that's up to you. I actually love how you said that your mother told you what to think about. I think that that's incredible. That you have...
He's a secular Jewish kid, right?
Yeah.
He's not religious, and he has to turn to his mom. Mom, what are our values? Yeah, that's what this is all about.
And that's amazing. Have that conversation with your parents. Have that conversation with your children. What should I be thinking about for one moment a day? We're not talking about an hour. We're not talking about going to, taking a certain course. We're talking about a moment in a day. And it's just interesting, as we're even talking about this, I'm realizing it's more than even that moment. It's the conversations that that moment can actually bring about. And that is so incredibly powerful. Are we talking about these things at the dinner table? Are we sitting around the dinner table as a family to be able to have these conversations? I think that this is incredibly, incredibly important.
You know, you don't need to wait for your kid to come home from public school and say, hey, mom and dad, we just had a moment of silence at school today and I had no idea what to think about. They said something about values. What are our values? You can do it at the dinner table tonight. You can do it every night. You can talk to your kids about values and the value that Rabbi Murray just mentioned, something so profound that every single human being is created in the image of God, which means every human being has value, is a gift that God has given this world, even if you don't agree with their political views. If you could expand on that, Rabbi Murray, please.
Yes, I think that's a very important point right there.
To add on to what you said, is that each of us, each and every single person has a mission. We came into the world, and each of us in a very unique way. And we've had different life experiences. And there's a very profound concept and frame of mind that you teach your child that they matter, that they make a difference. Not only do they make a difference, but they have a unique mission to perform in the world that only they can perform. Yeah. These are teachings of the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and they're timeless teachings. They're teachings that are extremely relevant to our lives today. You know, as parents, we have a choice of how we're going to educate our children. Of what, I can't control what happens outside my house, but I can make sure that my children know that they, each and every one of them, are special. They have a mission that only they can fulfill. And to teach them that they need to behave decently and honestly. Not because there's a fear of a policeman or someone that they can outsmart, or don't touch the knobs in the stove because even when no one's looking, because God is always looking. There's always an eye that sees and an ear that hears. And that's the basis of a moral education for our children. If we're going to behave because someone's watching us, then what happens if no one's watching us? What if there's not a policeman or a teacher telling you, don't hit that person or don't steal that thing? God gave all of humanity 7 laws on which all of our societies, our modern societies, are based off of. It's the Noahide code. If you want to get some more information about that, you can go to Ask Noah, as in Noah's Ark, asknoah.org. There's a wealth of information there. But the 7th of the Noahide laws, the Noahide code, is to establish laws and courts, and to have justice, and to have that there's a regulation system of how we interact with each other in society. I'm personally very frightened by what's happening in American society today. There's academics who are being thrown out of their institutions because they disagree with the political movement. There's the burning and looting of your neighbor's stores. Murder of people who are trying to protect others' property. This is crazy. If you were to tell me this is, 200 years ago in Eastern Europe and it's another program, okay, this is 2020.
United States of America.
And look what's happening. Look what's happening.
So just to reiterate that point.
Rabbi Murray is our guest here. I'm Rabbi David Vigler, and my wife is Rabbi Chana Vigler, both co-directors and spiritual leaders of the Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens. And we're so honored to have a very special guest with us today as we talk about the 3 vital tools to healing our hurting world. The first of our 2 guests is Rabbi Binyamin Murray. Together with his wife, Dr. Davida Murray, and their children, they lead the Chabad of Middlebury, Vermont. And he's talking about racial prejudice in not only in the Jewish community, but racial prejudice in the whole world. That every single one of us, by divine design, by default, somehow we have a bias. Whether, that's an interesting conversation about the bias that we have inherently within us. But the way that we can overcome that bias is by recognizing that every single person is created in the image of God. Every single person has value. And that notion of re-inviting God and the conversation about God into our dinner tables, into our schools, into our regular water cooler conversations will inspire us to become more respectful of other people, of the people that we agree with, of the people that we disagree with, the people of different classes or groups, recognizing that every single person is a gift from God, created in the image of God. And that moment of silence that we can share in our public schools, that we can share at our dinner tables, that we can do with our families, that we can do on our own, will help center us, will help remind us of a higher power. Rabbi Murray, I know you have to go, and it's such a fascinating conversation. Before we welcome our second guest to our Facebook.com feed here at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, I'd like to ask you if you will, just a closing statement from you before you need to go.
We have to recenter. And again, recognize that we're all one. Recognize that we have an abundant amount of blessings in our lives. And there's no need for fighting or for bickering or animosity towards each other. And each of us needs to strengthen our own selves and our family units. These are basic things. They're fundamental things. It's not easy, but the foundation is really education. And it's up to each and every one of us to make sure that we're making the world a better place.
Rabbi Murray, you inspire me to realize that color means absolutely nothing. It is so fascinating to hear your reflections, your life experiences, your pain, and the prejudice that you personally experienced through your interesting and fascinating life journey. I want to thank you for joining us here today, and may we all be inspired, just as we let you go here.
Yes,
may we all be
so
inspired to be able to see the divinity, to see the divine image within every other person.
Yeah, I hope that we get to host you here in Palm Beach Gardens.
Yes, friends, we're just getting warmed up with Rabbi Murray. I know we got a lot more to go with him. Thank you, Rabbi Murray, for joining us here on Zoom. Go ahead.
Welcome. Thank you for the opportunity.
We're honored to have you. Thank you so very much, Rabbi Murray. This is Rabbi and Rebbetzin David and Chana Vigler. We are husband and wife co-directors of the Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens, and we are hosting the Sunday Shmooze radio show for the past 12 or 11 years. We're moving over into Facebook and YouTube, so please subscribe to us at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, as well as facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, where we will continue to bring you high quality, interesting, fascinating content, keep you spiritually inspired and uplifted, keeping you centered, keeping you grounded. We'll be right back right after this. Don't go away as we welcome our next special guest.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Murray.
Thank you, Rabbi Murray.
Go back onto Zoom.
We got to go back onto Zoom here, and it's over here.
We are super excited, actually, to introduce our next guest, who is a dear friend of ours. So you're
a member of our community, and you're listening to the Rabbi and Rebbetzin. I'm Rabbi David Vigler. My wife is Rebbetzin Chana Vigler, and we are the co-directors of the Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens. We are here with you live at facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. That's facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, as we talk about racial prejudice in the Jewish community. And we're talking today about three tools, vital tools, that are critical to healing our hurting world. We just spoke to Rabbi Binyamin Murray, who's the director of the Chabad of Middlebury, Vermont, who spoke to us about the first value. And that first value is the moment of silence, recognizing that we can do something meaningful, to recognize that there is a higher power, that we do what we do not because someone's watching, not because we might get caught, not because there's a cop who might throw us into jail or who might give us a fine, because what happens when you outsmart the cop? The moment of silence reminds us to live and breathe and think higher, as we recognize that there is an eye that sees, and that there is an ear that hears, that God is always watching over us. God cares for us deeply, and God is deeply, deeply disappointed when we fall, and God is incredibly inspired when we rise. It is with that fundamental grounding, with that moment of silence, that we can pick ourselves up, not only as Jewish people, but as citizens of the world, as citizens of this United States of America, to be able to see the humanity, to see the purpose, to see the value in other people. This is the foundation of the 7 Noahide laws. These are the 7 universal laws that were given to Noah after he survived the Great Flood. They were ratified by President Ronald Reagan and every single United States president since Ronald Reagan, that these are a universal code of conduct to recognize the higher purpose in our lives, and to recognize that we're not just here in some sort of a crazy wild jungle, but there is a master to this beautiful garden. We've got to just be able to recognize his presence in this world. And that's the first of the 3 tools that we're going to share with you today, 3 vital tools to heal our hurting world: the moment of silence at your school, the moment of silence at your table. Chana, if you could welcome our guest.
Yes, we are so excited to have our very own Grace, actually a member of Chabad of Palm Beach Gardens for quite some time now. And it is such an honor to hear from her firsthand account, her experience, what it was like walking into a Chabad for the first time, and what brought her in.
Grace, can you turn on your video?
Grace, is your camera on? There we go.
There we go. Can you focus a little closer so we can see you? There we go. Feel like it's another way.
Okay. Now
you just lower the angle a little bit so we can see your face.
You pick up your screen. I don't know if it's a laptop or.
There we go.
Now we see you.
Into sharp focus. Grace Stewart is a member of our Jewish community, and we're honored to have you with us. Grace, thank you for joining us on this fascinating show as we take on racial prejudice in the Jewish community. Grace is a beloved member of our community. Grace, if you could please tell us, how did you feel before you entered our shul for the very first time?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And it's my pleasure to be here. Okay, how did I feel? Well, just to give you a little bit of a backdrop, I am from Jamaica, where, to be really honest, I really didn't grow up knowing what prejudice really was all about. For the most part, my community, we were poor people. Everybody was happy with each other. The only class distinction I really knew was rich or poor, not like white or black or whatever, you know what I mean? So I didn't really know a lot about prejudice before I came here. So when I came to this country, I didn't know that much. I learned prejudice, and that's why people say prejudice is really learned, because after a while people begin to say, well, this is prejudice or that is prejudice, something that I wouldn't really feel sensitive about. People would be like, how did you let that slide? That person is slighting you, or that's prejudice, or so on and so forth. So I learned prejudice being here, but when I came to the shul, my fear was not so much about myself. I don't have a concern about how I look in the eyes of people. I was more concerned about how people would feel having somebody that's a little bit different from them in their midst. So that was my main concern. So what I had to tell myself was that always have to bear in mind what your focus is. Why are you going to this shul? What do you hope to achieve? So if I have that, I know what I'm going there for. I know what I'm going to achieve. So the side issues, I can block. I'm pretty good at blocking stuff that I don't think is really productive to me. So my first day when I came to the shul, my concern was that, how people are uncomfortable, but I kind of set my focus on what was going on the beamer and the other things I could block out. Of course, I made my own impressions and I made my own conclusions. I, after a while, begin to understand what prejudice is and what could be prejudice and what might not be prejudice. So when I walked in, I said that person might be prejudiced because of this, or that person might be prejudiced because of that. So I'm not, prejudice is both ways. You know what I mean?
Oh,
prejudice is toward me, and I might have my own prejudices towards somebody else as well. So
that's so interesting, right? You think that prejudice goes one way, but that's really interesting. You came in and you were sizing people up.
Of course.
Based on what they look like.
It's a lot like Rabbi Murray said, that every
So
one of us
interesting.
is a bias.
People size me up and I size people up. You know, after a while, you
Not that
break down. After a while, you can break the prejudices down when you get to know somebody.
That's right.
You just can't. I was watching a video of, there's this guy who goes into the community up in Brooklyn, and he gets to know the Jewish people, and he's like, well, how can you hate somebody who you know? So, you start off thinking a certain thing, and then after a while you can shed the negatives that you have or the prejudices that you have. And the unfortunate thing about this country and people in general is that people get to know you and they still hate you, and that I don't understand.
Oh gosh, because I was actually going to say that I think that that's such a great point, because I think that's so true. How can you hate somebody that you know? And in general, when you have a conversation and you hear about people's experiences and you hear about their lives and you invite them into your home and you spend time with them, how could you not love them? So I'm actually kind of, what do you think about that? I mean, what kind of experience have you had that people have gotten to know you and they still don't like you?
Well, I don't know if in my own personal experience but I think, to be really honest with you, I think there are levels of tolerance in any given situation. And being in the Jewish community, I have experienced levels of tolerance. There are people who, when you meet them the first day or when you know them for a little, they're wary of you. And then eventually they warm to you a little bit. People might be more willing to say hi to you. But what I have found is that there are times when people who are different, I would say you're not received because you don't enhance the image of the other person. And what I mean by that is, from my personal experience and from my personal standpoint, there are some, if I go someplace, I've been to different Jewish communities at different levels of observance and in different cities. And if I go to somewhere and I get to know, and I see somebody, I've seen them on a regular basis, depending on their interactions with me, if I see them in public, I won't talk to them because I don't want to be slighted. And I've seen people who have seen me over a period of time, and they might see me in a certain setting. I might get a high from them in one setting, but in a certain setting, I do not get a high. Not that I don't think I will get a high, I do not get a high. I do not get a hi and a hello from them, because in that setting, I don't enhance their image. They might feel like they're with important people, they're with friends who would frown upon them to know that they're really acquainted with or are comfortable with that person. That's
people are embarrassed to associate with you sometimes?
Yes.
For people to see others talking to you? Is that what you're saying?
No. I'm saying that if I am in a certain setting, some people might be comfortable to say hi to me, but let's say they're in a setting where they feel like their friends are at a certain level, or they feel like, let me say, for example, if I were in the shul, just for an example, there's somebody who might say hi to me, but if I were to see them in the mall and they're walking with friends, they would not say hi to me.
How incredibly hurtful. That must be so hurtful.
Wow. But I think that I would imagine that that experience is probably true. I mean, it's in terms of judgments that we have on others, and in terms of how we are, the image that we want to create. I mean, I find it incredibly painful to think that people would actually choose who they want to be seen with and who not, based on any factor, whether it's the income level or job level or color of their skin. I mean, it's
or size level. It could be a lot of different things that people are prejudiced about.
So Grace, what do you think is the solution to that? How can we heal a world that has so much bias?
I think we probably just by one person at a time. You know, the nature of my job is that I see every type of people in a very up close and personal way. And I mean very up close and personal. And at the end of the day, when somebody takes their $400 suit off and they put aside their $80,000 diamond ring and they take off the jewelry and they put a hospital gown on, everybody looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
So
you would know that. You would know that being a nurse in the hospital. Yeah. You have firsthand experience.
Right.
That looks like.
So if you then, I don't know how rich this person is. I don't know who his friends are. I don't know what the size of his house is. I just really see a sick person. Right. So I just deal with the person as an individual.
Someone who needs your help.
Right. And if we get to the place where we can see somebody as an individual, like, you know, instead of saying, don't see a color, see somebody like who might be a mother or might be somebody's sister or might be a good co-worker. You know, we have to see people more for who they are from inside. And that's a very hard thing to do. I think one of the problems also is that everybody likes to be on top of, at the head of somebody else. Nobody really likes to know that they're at the bottom. And this whole mentality of being on top or have some kind of somebody under you it's very problematic, because if we can see ourselves as equal, then it kind of makes you feel like, well, it's not the clothes, it's not the money, it's not the whatever, it's just another person. He's a sister, he's a brother of somebody else, I'm the brother of somebody else. That's a mother of somebody, I'm a mother of somebody else. See people more like things that make us distinctly people. Because right. Clothes doesn't make us people. Jewelry doesn't make us people. I mean, your job as whoever you are doesn't really make you a person, because when you go home at the end of the day, you put aside all the trappings of your work and you become a person in your home. So we have to begin to see people on equal footing. And
Grace, I can't believe that it's 2020 and we're actually having these conversations. You know, I feel like this is so 1600s. You know,
but
I feel like this is so beyond the times. I feel like we're way.
But I think that what Grace is saying is really the second.
Yes, which is exactly where I'm going.
The second of our vital tools.
Yes.
To healing a hurting world, because I really think that you hit the nail on the head, Grace. It's the ability to see the divine image, the soul within each and every single other person. I loved your image, Grace, of being in the hospital where you serve as a nurse. And a nurse practitioner in the emergency room, I believe, right? And yes. you see people divested of all of their identity enhancers.
Right.
Cars, no Gucci labels, no fancy shoes, no jewelry, just people. Mm-hmm. And there you're able to see each other as just as equals. And if we could only incorporate a meditation of the divine image, of how every single person is created in the image of God, then we can work towards one word, which is respect.
Right.
It's just one word, being able to respect every single other person. The guy at the valet, the waitress, the mailman, the CEO, as well as the janitor. It makes no difference. If you're a human being, if you're just a human being, it means you were created B'Tselem Elokim, in the image of God. And that's the second of our three vital tools to healing this hurting world. In addition to the moment of silence, recognizing a higher power, is being able to see the divinity within each and every single other person, regardless of the color of their skin and regardless of the car that they drive or the size of their bank account. We can overcome the bias by merely nurturing a sense of respect, by greeting each and every other person.
Yeah, I feel like what's incredible about the situation that we're encountering right now is that it has brought this conversation to the fore, that now we are talking about the soul And if we're not talking about the soul, then I think we completely miss the point. That this is the fact of the matter. What I was saying earlier is that I can't believe that we're in 2020 and we're having this conversation, that we're still struggling with judging people skin deep, you know, for lack of better of words. But I think that, you know, Rabbi Murray was saying about telling children how they have a soul, they're created in the image of God, and that they have a unique purpose. But I think even more than that, it's us recognizing in others that others have a soul and others have what to contribute. And every single one of us was created here for a purpose. It's easy to tell ourselves, you were put on this earth, you have a specific mission, you have something that unique that only you can contribute. But we need to remember that about every single person that we meet, that they were put on this earth with a unique mission, with something unique to contribute, and greet them as such, treat them as such. And I think that will take away a nice chunk of our issues.
You know, there's one thing I've always thought about, and it's not struggle with it, but I find it to be quite appalling that there is prejudice, or for want of a better word, I'm just going to say prejudice in Judaism, because I think that the Jewish history and the Black history is pretty similar. We've all been enslaved. We've all been persecuted. We've been kicked around from place to place. I mean, and I get the feeling that the Jews will acknowledge this, but they will, and I hope I don't want to be just, I don't know. Maybe somehow in some people's mind, they think that, I know we have the same history, we've been through some of the same things, but ours was a little bit more superior. I don't get it. I really don't get, why would a Jewish person be prejudiced? I can't get it, because I mean, I work with different people and I hear the way people speak of Jews even now. Mm-hmm. And I mean, of course, I'm there, the Black person. It's not my turn yet, and maybe when I leave, my turn comes up. But I hear the way people speak of Jews. I mean, it's just bad. You know what I mean?
No, so right.
I'm thinking of all the people who should never be prejudiced. I'm not saying you should bring everybody to your home. I'm not saying you should, you know, but I don't get it. I don't see how Jewish people can be prejudiced.
Right, it's human nature. It says in the Torah that we should not make fun or persecute the stranger, because you yourselves were strangers in a foreign land. The Torah says that over and over and over again. We have, as human beings, we like to be tribal. We like to say them and us. We like to affiliate with something bigger than ourselves. But what the Torah is inspiring us to do is to be able to divest of any hate whatsoever. And the Torah is calling on us to do that. The Torah recognizes our failings as human beings, our imperfections and our struggles. And what we're talking about here today on this racial prejudice in the Jewish community live feed on facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. That's facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. What we're talking about is the 3 vital tools to healing our hurting world, which we've spoken about 2 of them. And in our last few moments over here, I would just like to address the third. The third one is, in addition to the moment of silence, and in addition to
created in the image of God,
recognizing the image of God within everybody, and having that basic respect to greet and to speak to every other person with respect. The third and final of the vital tools is to recognize that hate doesn't just go away. You don't just take away darkness. You've got to replace it with a greater light. And as a society, we've gone so far in evolving technologically and medically and scientifically, and in our transportation and our innovation. In every segment of humanity, we've progressed since the Middle Ages, except for one where we've regressed. And that is our relationship with God. It used to be that we were able to talk about God and we were comfortable talking about God. But today, heaven help us. Today it's considered so primitive, it's considered unnecessary. God is redundant. And when we remove God from our conversations, when we remove God from our public schools and from our streets and from our families and from our lives, when we exile God into the houses of worship and into the religion section of the library, we're leaving the rest of our lives exposed and vulnerable. Just like as human beings, we need air and water and food in order to survive. For values, we need to be able to welcome God back into our conversation. This is something that our founding fathers understood very, very well. One nation under God.
We cannot be one nation if we are not under God.
That's so well said, honey. No, we cannot be one nation unless we're under God, because why else are we one nation? It's only because God. It's so beautiful. I never thought of it that way, you know? It's one nation because we're under God. And if you delete God from the sentence, then you've also deleted the one nation. You're not really a nation. You're a fragmented survival of the fittest kind of situation.
And I think that's incredibly important to remember. It's very important to remember. It's easy to put people in a box. And every one of us could be in a box because we each have we're all different. And that's what makes us special, right? Being different. Every single person is different. We need to remember that we are one. Our differences shouldn't separate us. Our differences should unite us. And we should realize that we are really just under one big umbrella under God.
We cannot rob our kids of the gift of God. You know, we can't expect our kids to be decent, honest, and upright if we've robbed them of values, of accountability, of being able to recognize a higher purpose and a higher power. Without God, it's just, you know, dog eat dog. It's the survival of the fittest. But when we have the courage and the moral fortitude to reintroduce God back into our lives and to realize that God is not a religious value. God is a reality. Is a reality. Yeah. God is a fact of life. God is not a religious value. You can believe in the houses of worship. God is a fact of life. If we remove that foundation, that founding principle from our conversation, from our schools, from our dining rooms, from our workplaces, then what we're left with is chaos, and that we're left with anarchy. And with that, we're running out of time. So just to sum up over here, our 3 vital tools for healing our hurting world. Number 1, we said we've got to have the moment of silence. The moment of silence to recognize that we are here for a higher purpose. There's an eye that is watching us. There is an ear that is hearing us. There's something that cares, a higher power. Ask your parents what those values are that you believe in. But as long as we're accountable to a higher power.
Speak to your children about those values that you believe in.
That's one practical thing you can do to heal a hurting world, is to exercise a moment of silence around your kitchen table. A second practical thing that you can do is to exercise respect. To make the effort to greet every single person. To talk to the mailman, to talk to the milkman. Do we still have milkmans today?
No, we don't.
You know,
we have Amazon drivers.
Yeah, FedEx drivers, right? To talk to them.
Get to know them.
Thank them. Ask them how their day is going. See them as human beings by recognizing that they're created in the image of God. And finally, the third vital tool to healing our hurting world is to have the courage to reintroduce the G word, the God word, into our conversation. To recognize that we are here for a purpose. Nothing is random. Everything has value. And when we can introduce that God into our lives, it's then that we can have values. It's then that we can have principles. Then we can exercise justice and true justice and true peace by being able to serve the creator of the universe with the instruction manual through which this world was created.
And thank you so much, Grace. I've always told you that your name is so befitting to you, because when you walk in, you bring with you so much grace and so much beauty and so much peace and serenity. And we've all been so enriched by having you as a part of our family for all these past many years. And I hope that our discussion today will really help people to come out of their box and widen the box and
with courage
and include other people into the box and realize that every single person has something to teach you. Every single person has something to enrich your life with. And we are all better off by having each other. And by pushing some of us away really just only depletes us. it's our loss.
Right. And
we got to sign up. Just give us a closing comment, please, Grace.
I just want to add that Rabbi and Rabbi Sinha, you have been very welcoming, very warm, very open, very non-judgmental. Just, you know, I remember when I came there, I came for, I think, Pesach before, and then I came the following Shabbos. And, you know, Rabbi Ziegler, you just kind of, you made me feel welcome. And I still think that you made a lot of effort to make people feel comfortable that I was there. You welcomed me like every week. We want to welcome Grace here, and you know, just to make sure that I felt comfortable. And you have always been very supportive, very welcoming, very warm, and so has been Miss Sinha. And I thank you for your support, and of course for all the times we've spent together in Israel or in the shul or different events. And I appreciate you very much.
Grace, thank you. You're a gift and a blessing.
You.
And it comes from our hearts. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us here today to talk about this incredibly important issue, Grace. We're grateful to have you here. We're grateful to have you part of our community. And we look forward to many great times ahead. So friends, thank you for joining us here today at Facebook.com. We are migrating our radio show in the coming weeks from the radio onto social media. So please do subscribe to us at youtube.com/Jewish Gardens. That's youtube.com/Jewish Gardens, as well as facebook.com/Jewish Gardens. That's facebook.com/Jewish Gardens, where Chan and I, the Rabbi and the Rebbitzin, will be doing a lot more creative, inspiring, and fun content coming up. We're going to keep this up weekly, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Watch this space. Share the video with your friends. Please like this video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to us on YouTube. We're grateful to have you. Thank you very much. Let's heal this world because it's hurting. We can do this. Thank you very much, Grace. Over and out.
You're welcome. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Shalom.